he was almost having a heart attack, right? That there was a woman in his trophy room, and he said to me, I hope that you're honoured. You're the only woman that's been allowed in this trophy room that hasn't served me tea.
Okay, let's take it from the top.
Marian Ferguson's journey in the property and construction industry has been defined by determination, hard work and resilience. From a young graduate eager to take on the world to founding her own engineering design business later in life, Marian has carved out a remarkable path in building services engineering. In this episode, Marian shares her pivotal moments that have shaped her career, all the way from being denied entry to owning and making the bold decision to start a business in her late 40s, and how she still finds inspiration. Marian, welcome to Places She Shapes at Abbey Road Studios. Thanks so much for being here. Can you tell me a bit about a young Marian at school? What was she like?
Kind of a bit of a rebel, I suppose. You don't expect anything less, really. I actually wanted to be a dancer because I loved dancing, I loved music, I loved movement, but that doesn't really make any money unless you're at the top of your game. So I did decide at a very early age that I wanted to do something that would add value, but also give me a career. And to cut a long story short, that's how I ended up in engineering.
Was there a certain person that influenced you towards engineering?
I would think probably at school, I was very good at sciences. Most of the girls, I went to an all-girls school, most of the girls in my class were either going to go and do medicine or pharmacy. And that was a route that my parents wanted me to go. But I didn't really want to do that. And a careers teacher did say to me, well, what about engineering? Engineering adds value to the community. You can change things, you can influence. There's some great engineers who have gone before you. Thing is, not many girls do engineering, so how do you feel about that? And it was like, well, that's a no-brainer then. So I would say my careers teacher probably inadvertently pushed me on that path by saying, I don't think it's something you can do.
What did your parents do?
My parents were blue-collar workers, and they didn't really understand what that was about, but they appreciated that I went to university. They wanted better for their children, basically. And they really did want me to go and do medicine because they could understand what a doctor did, couldn't quite understand what an engineer did, but they supported me. And, I'm being really thankful for the support that they gave me through that.
What was your experience like at university?
Oh, proper eye-opener. I've come from what people would now call a disadvantaged background. It wasn't disadvantaged to us then. It was how people lived. And when I went to university, it was the first time really I had exposure to people who were outside my social circle in the East End of Glasgow. And it was like, gosh, people don't live like me. This is really different. And at that time as well, I was really into music as well. And the whole music scene was changing. People at Boy George and Culture Club and the New Romantics were coming on. I had gone through the punk phase as well, and so this was a natural progression. So it was a real changer for me going to university. No one else in my family had ever gone to university or had any education at all. So this was a real difference, and I really struggled. And doing engineering at university was a tough gig. I mean, I had lectures every day. Some of my friends who were doing social sciences had a lecture a week. And so it was tough. You had a lot to do. You were in a learning environment, and you were thrown into an environment that was just really different. And so I really struggled.
What were the struggles specifically?
I can't do this. I'm out of my comfort zone. I don't really know how to do it and what to do. And at one point, I thought, I'm going to drop out. I'm going to go and get a job. And I looked at that. And I did get offered a job, and I thought long and hard about what do I do. But whenever I've come a crossroads in my life, I say, what if you did that, Marian, and then said, wonder what happened if I had gone to university? So I stuck it out, and here I am.
You've mentioned to me that as a 20-year-old grad, you were ready to take on the world. Can you tell me more about your early days in engineering?
Oh gosh, yes, what an eye-opener. So you come out of university, and most people who come out of university do think they know all, because you've had 4 years of academia and everybody telling you you're great, especially if you come out with good grades. I came out top of my class with good grades, and you think, right, okay. But very quickly I realised actually no one wanted to employ me. And I really struggled with the fact that I come from an environment where you think, this is fantastic, this is what I want to do, you can do it all, to like, well, who do you think you are? And really struggled. It was it was the 80s, it was 1985 when I graduated. Women weren't really in mainstream engineering, certainly not in building services engineering, which what I specialised in the construction industry. And people didn't want to give me a job. And
Because you were female?
because I was a female. At one interview, somebody said to me, why should I employ a woman? You're just going to go and have a family. I've got a queue of guys outside the door. I could employ any of those. You sort of go away, don't waste my time. And that was a real downer, and a realisation that, wow, okay, this is a tough gig. And I eventually did get a job in the public sector, and I was sitting doing stuff that, this is really what went to university for. No, it wasn't. So I really focused on trying to get out of that and get a job that I really wanted. And it took me 2 years. But in the meantime, I had rent to pay, I had bills to pay, I needed to eat, I needed to live. So I just toughed it out.
Where were you living?
I was living in Glasgow at that point, and I'd left home. And I was living with my partner then, who ultimately became my husband, who ultimately became my ex-husband. And it's another story. And, it was tough.
Okay. And then you've mentioned to me finding an opportunity that shaped the rest of your career. Can you tell me more about that moment?
There's been a couple of real moments, if I think, in my career. One was when someone, at that time it was 1987, and someone gave me the opportunity to come and work in the private sector. And what afterwards they said to me, they just loved my tenacity to come in, and it was just like, I've got to get this. And they really gave me an opportunity which onwards shaped my career. And then another point in my life where it shaped my career was a chance conversation with someone who said, we're thinking of opening a London office. And I said, well, I can do that. And I said, "Oh, do you really want to? And, nobody really wants to do that." I said, yes, I'll go and do that. And they were like, okay. And I did that, and that started my my path to London and where I am now.
What do you think made you say yes to that opportunity?
Just the excitement of it. It was something different. Scotland, working in Scotland, very, very small, very small industry in Scotland. And quite frankly, I probably couldn't do what I've done in London in Scotland, because it just wasn't, it just wasn't set up for it, wasn't ready for it. Whereas London accepts all. That's what when I came down, that's what I really noticed.
So you've worked with some of the largest global practices in the UK and Europe. What was that experience like, and how did it contribute to your growth in the industry?
Well, it gave me such a lot of experience in terms of the type of work I was doing and the people I was meeting on the way, and also gave me an opportunity, especially when I was working in projects in Europe, to see how other people did it in our industry. And, we get very complacent about in the UK about how we think we've got it right in so many ways. And it exposed me to, actually, guys, you know what? We've got a lot to learn in how it's done in Europe, and subsequently the work I've done in North America too. So it really gave me an opportunity to see how others do it, and that has influenced me.
What are they? Could you give us a couple of examples of things that you think we could do better?
Probably just attitude and collaboration. When I came from Scotland to London, I noticed immediately that it was less confrontational, and people were just wanting to get on and do the work. The industry, I see, is becoming more confrontational now. In Europe, you didn't have any of that. Everybody was much more relaxed. When the guys come on site, nothing happens until coffee's had. And you don't talk work. You chat, how you doing, talk about football game or whatever, have your coffee, then it's work time. And then it's 4:30, guys. No, it's not work time. And we've got a tendency to think you've just got to just push yourself all the time, do this. If you're not working, then you're being idle. Whereas in Europe, it's like, no, now it's me time, and people come to work refreshed as opposed to coming to work ready to have a fight.
In your 30s and 40s, you considered leaving the industry. Can you tell me more about that?
You get very disillusioned, where you feel you're pushing against closed doors, and you have to ask yourself, is this really worth the energy anymore? And I was listening to people. I was still, in the minority in my industry, and listening to people, mostly men, telling everyone how fantastic they were, how rubbish everyone else was, and how they could do this and do that. And I sat there and I thought, if you really believe that, why don't you go and do it? And it was a switching point for me where I thought, I want to make a change. Make the change. Go take that step. And so in my 40s, that's when I decided I would look at starting my own business, which is what I did in my late 40s. Everyone thought it was absolutely crazy. Why are you doing this? And why are you doing this now? And why are you doing it in this industry? But I just felt, if I want to make a change, I have to really do this. Otherwise, I'm just going to sit here and then probably leave the industry, and I'll be asking myself, what if?
Did you have anybody in particular that really supported you in that decision?
Absolutely no one. And that's been a real common thing when people have said, who did you look at for mentors? Who did you look at for support? There was nobody around. People hadn't really done this before in my situation, and everybody just thought I was crazy. And ultimately my family did support me, because the first 6 months I started my own business, I earned no money. I had no money. And anything I had to pay my rent. So my family just basically made up little food hampers for me and sent it down to me. And, Christmas presents were toothpaste and soap, and I was really thankful. So they supported me in that respect, where they recognised, okay, she wants to do this and we've got to help her. But no one really said, yeah, let's do this 100%. Let's help. There was no one. And in some respects, I had to make my own mistakes myself to see how to move forward on it.
What is it about you that made you get me quite emotional? That made you that determined that you thought you could do that?
You come onto this earth for something, and if you just want to sit in the sidelines all the time, that's absolutely fine. But I wasn't that person, and all through my life, something that's been really strong is how can you add value and how can you make a difference to what is here and now, and what do you want to be remembered for? And each time that I felt I've got to stop, I can't take any more, I just remember a quote that says to me, to stop now is to be complicit in the status quo. So if you think what's happening right now, Marian, is totally acceptable, then stop now. But if you don't, do something about it. And if people want to listen to you, they'll listen to you. And if they don't, they won't. And that's their choice. It's not yours. But always have a voice. And somehow have a voice even when people don't want to listen to you. And that's that determination. I've got an amazing respect for my mum, amazing respect for her, because she had such a difficult life. And 100% she said, I can't give up. I've got to have resilience. And if there's one thing that I've carried with me is do not give up, girl, because that is being complicit to that this is acceptable.
What are some of the obstacles that have stood in your way when running Energy Lab?
Oh, gosh, loads. there's very little support for women in business. Very little support. In our own network, it's great. But whenever I've tried to drum up finance or drum up some support from my peers, it hasn't been there. And I know from my work that I'm doing now with women in engineering that that's changing now. But it would have been really useful if someone had said, do you know what, I'll invest in that. I'll give you some money, Marian. I'll help you. Instead of like, well, if you think you can do it, girl, go do it. But, we're not sure about that. So I would say women in business face all sorts of obstacles when it comes to finance and business support. The whole business community, to me, sometimes feels as if it's for men, by men, and that it totally sidelines women and what women's needs are. And that has got to change. And I don't know quite how to change it, but by walking away from it isn't the answer. Get the voice and tell people about this, and maybe someone will listen.
If you could pinpoint one decision that changed the trajectory of your career, what would it be?
Oh gosh, one decision. That's a biggie because there's been so many. Probably taking a step to come to London and leave everything behind. I came down to London, knew no one, found myself having to look for some accommodation and ended up sharing a flat with a bunch of weird guys, which was an experience in itself, but was fun. And that then opened a few doors for me because I could then, I was then said, actually, people don't care that you're a woman and you're a Glaswegian and you're doing stuff you shouldn't do. People were really, to me, really accepting, coming from a community that was actually quite, when I look back, close-minded. So coming to London was probably the single biggest thing. The downside of that, I remember phoning my mum and going, nobody speaks to you here. And if anybody knows Glasgow, you could be standing at the bus stop, and if you're not speaking to the person next to you, you're being rude. You do that here in London, and people think you're weird. So that was a struggle I had in London, but I've loved being in London.
So you've won several awards, including the Best European MEP Engineer at the Women in Construction and Engineering Awards.
Yes.
Can you tell me a bit about how that recognition felt?
It was a bit of a double-edged sword for me. It was fantastic. And what was also fantastic about it is that it was just little old me. I didn't have a marketing team behind me. I didn't come from a business where it was big support. It was Energy Lab. It was me. I did my own marketing material and I told my own story. And during the judging, you had to carry out a presentation. And I basically said to the judges, this is just my story. I'll leave it to you to decide if this is worthy of an award. And I just told them my story. To actually get the recognition that what I had done was worthy of somebody saying, do you know what, that's really good. And, at the ceremony, people saying to me, it's so good to see somebody from your background and in a small business do this. And it's inspired me. And so that's got me going as well. And that got me quite emotional. But on the flip side, I don't do stuff to get recognition. I do stuff because that's what I want to do. And if somebody recognises me along the way, that's fantastic. And so sometimes when I get recognition for it, I feel a little bit of a fraud almost because, well, I never actually set out to do this. All I did was tell my story.
Just be naturally brilliant. So what do those kind of awards mean to you in terms of the impact on the industry and you as a woman in this industry as well?
Well, for me, it's it does add a bit of gravitas. It's the same as somebody saying to you, do you need to be chartered? And I would say, as a woman, absolutely yes, you do, because it adds a bit of gravitas. Mm-hmm. The boys don't think they want to get chartered. That's up to them, but the gravitas. And awards like that, to me, add an element of, yeah, this girl's serious about what can be done and what can do, and you can do that too. So it's adding a level of recognition's the wrong word really, but just like acknowledgement that you're serious about this.
If you could go back in time, what advice would you give to your younger self?
That's a difficult one because if somebody had given me advice and I'd followed it, I might be a different person. So I try not to look back and think, oh gosh, I wish I'd known that. But there's a few things. Certainly walking your own path and doing what you think is right as opposed to what other people are telling you is the right thing to do. Because you don't know what they're thinking and they don't know you don't know what's on their agenda. If you're true to yourself, then you always know you've done the right thing. And I've looked back and some of the decisions I've made in my life and in my career have been because I felt that's what I should do as opposed to that's what I really wanted to do.
Can you give me an example of that?
Some of the jobs I've taken and some of the projects I've worked on and some of the and some of the people that I've worked with where I felt I had to do that either because that was going to be a good move for my career or everyone was saying to me, you should take that job because that's a really good outfit, only to find out actually it's not, it's toxic, or the people that you're working with are toxic, or they've got a different agenda and they're just using you to get to where they want to as opposed to where you want to get to. And so I might have, I might not have taken those positions, but again, I look back and go, well, they shaped me. And I had to learn the hard way. I absolutely feel you have to learn by your own mistakes. There's a saying, I think, I'm trying to think who it was, who said that experience is a tag they give to their mistakes. And it is experience and it is a mistake and you learn from it. And if you go through life and everything's rosy and you're not making mistakes and you're not down and you're not falling on your backside and having to find the energy and the tenacity to get back up when everybody's just saying just stay down there, then why go on?
Do you think you were ever employed because you're a woman?
There's times where I've actually, thought that. I have thought that, particularly with some of the larger organisations. And people have said to me, you only got this job because you're a woman. And what that does is that makes me go, no, I want to show you I got this job because I'm actually a good engineer. But there is a bit of that that's going on. And in organisations that I worked with, and I saw that the people that they were employing also to tick their diversity boxes, I just stop. And it's something that in my business, I've absolutely not done. You get the job because you're the best person for the job. And if you're a woman or you're coming from a different background, a person of colour, or, someone who's come from another country, that's absolutely fine. But I'm not setting out to do those diversity boxes. You're the right person for the job. And I think as an employer, you owe that to your employees.
Yeah. Can you talk me through how you've gone about building your team and the culture of Energy Lab?
The really interesting thing for me was that people wanted to come and work for me or with me, really believed in what I was doing, and wanted to join me on that journey. And that was really an enlightening process. And I've made lots of mistakes as an employer and I've employed people I shouldn't have employed. And I've learned from that. But people who I have employed that have stayed with me through the journey have totally bought into what we were trying to do things differently, add value to the process, and let's all have a bit of fun along the way.
Yeah. So how have you gone about creating that? How have they understood from you what you were trying to achieve? How have you articulated that to them?
I've just been perfectly open and honest to people about why I do what I do and what the business is about and what we're trying to achieve. And if they believe in that, then they're the right person. If they don't believe in that, then they're not the right person. And, people are employed to earn money and do stuff. But if the first thing people come in and ask for is what's the salary, you're not the right person here. And, you know, that's a tough thing to say, but it is. You come here because you believe in what you do. If you want to go and get a salary, there's loads of other people who will just pay your salary. And so to me, I articulate the story of what we're trying to do, where we've come from and what we're trying to do. And then if you want to join us, great. And if you don't, I totally respect that. And so I've just been open and honest. And all the way through the business and its ups and downs, I've 100% always been really open with staff, to a point where some people think, you know, should you really have said that, Marian? Absolutely, yes. Yeah. Be open. And then everybody knows where they're at. There is no point in trying to drag somebody along. They've got to buy into it.
Have you done any mentoring?
If I have, I've done it unintentionally, because I don't actually see myself as a mentor or a role model. If what I do, people want to know about and want to reach out to me, absolutely, yes, then I'll help you. I'll help you if you want to help yourself. I hear all sorts of language about, you know, reach down and help people and don't pull the ladder up. And I just find that really condescending. That's not what it's about. It's about helping each other in any way that we can, because ultimately we're all walking the same road. We're all walking the same path ultimately. So help people along the way. And I have helped in my industry and in my institution. I have helped girls who have struggled to become chartered engineers and listen to their stories about their struggles for doing that, and have helped them in that. So in some respects, I suppose I'm a mentor on that, but I've not consciously gone out to be a mentor.
Can you talk to me more about that unconscious bias that women in construction and property and engineering are facing?
It's so obvious to us and not obvious to others. And even just the unconscious language that comes out from people's mouths when they're talking to you and talking about the industry, that you think, you know, what are you thinking of? And I was watching a documentary the other night there about women as unsung heroes in business. And it was around the music industry and the fashion industry. And somebody said a comment was, well, I didn't get that gig because I didn't get that record contract because they said, well, you're a woman and you're going to go and get pregnant and then you'll be off the scene, so why would I invest in you? And my husband was like, that's shocking. And I was like, welcome to my world, love. We have to deal with this all the time. Maybe now people won't be as obvious as that, but certainly that was the message I was getting. And it's still the message that's out there. Why would I invest in you? You're going to do this, you're going to do that. I've got somebody who can do the job just as good as you. And you just have to push against that. People have asked me about defining moments and where I've been set back. And the R&A golf club, very famous golf club in St Andrews. And in the late 80s, early 90s, they got funding to build a museum, a golf museum. And my employer won the competition to be the engineers on it. And I was the engineer on it. I was, you know, I loved golf and this was perfect for me. And one day the client said they would like to see a presentation on how the design is doing, but they certainly weren't going to come to site because they wouldn't lower themselves to come onto a building site. So come to the R&A clubhouse and have tea with us, which we all dutifully did. And we were waiting patiently for someone to come down and take us. And came down and said, well, she can't come in. And after a few questions why that was the case, women were not allowed in the R&A clubhouse at that time. Women were banned. Women shouldn't have been playing golf anyway, but women were banned. And to be fair, the contractor said, well, that's a shame because Marian's our engineer and Marian has to come and she's key to the presentation. So how do we get round this? And there was lots of, like, can we do it without her? And the compromise was, we'll smuggle her in what they called the tradesman's entrance. So they found someone who was willing to escort me through. went in the tradesman's entrance, through the kitchens, had to go through some of the, there were smokers' rooms at those times, to get a bit of a, oh my goodness, what's she doing in here? Till we got to the trophy room, and everybody sat down, and the president of the R&A was sitting there, and he was like, he was almost having a heart attack, right? There was a woman in his trophy room, and he said to me, I hope that you're honoured. You're the only woman that's been allowed in this trophy room that hasn't served me tea. And people say to me now, well, what was your response to that? And say, well, first of all, I'm petrified. I'm a young woman engineer.
Yeah.
I'm still early in my career, and I don't want to lose my job. So I just said to myself, well, I'll do my presentation. And I did my presentation, and everyone then said, well, okay, that's the right person for the job. And it's been a real defining moment for me, because it would have been so easy, one, to do a bit backlash and bang the table, which everybody, I think, was expecting. And then two, just walk away and go, I've had enough of this. But it made me absolutely more determined to do what I do and do it really well. And it's an unfair fact that women in this industry have to work harder and have to prove themselves and have to demonstrate all the credentials. You can't be mediocre, or you'll fail. And there is absolutely no point in getting down about that, because that is the reality of life. Life is unfair. So get on with it, and just show them what you've got. And that's what I did.
Yeah. How old were you when the...
Oh, I was in my 20s. I was, I graduated when I was 20, and I was in private practice when I was 22, 23. So it was around that time. So you're still learning, and you're still, it's still the late 80s. People aren't ready for this. People weren't ready for Boy George, right? So they certainly weren't ready.
They weren't ready for Marian.
They weren't ready for Marian, So it was challenging, but one thing, they don't forget you.
I've got a quite female heavy, strong PM team, as you know, and I've actually started saying in pitches now, where you've got a female team here, and you're going to meet a male team later, but your assumption is going to be that we can do it at this level and they can do it at that level. And so I just address it now in the room. It just only because it just personally makes me laugh a little bit. So, it's just a thing, isn't it?
Yes, but what I'm seeing more and more is that people that we are pitching to, there are women at the table. And, there's a, I'm not going to say there's a complete sisters thing, because it's not always like that, but the women at the table can understand where we're coming from. And, I've got a female client who particularly says, I love when women are on the team because they get stuff done, right? They don't walk around, swanning around, saying how brilliant we are. You just get stuff done. And I think that's
the polite version.
Yeah. Yes, it is the polite version. And you're just like, yeah, that's the angle to take. We get stuff done. Don't like it, go and get another team.
You've mentioned your husband a few times. How has he supported your career?
Well, he's my sounding board in terms of, he's in the industry also, so he understands, the things that go through, but he's my really sounding board. He knows not to tell me, but listen and in his way, offer maybe a bit of advice. This is the way I would do it, Marian, and then I can either decide whether that's a good thing or not. But he's so 100% behind me, and he's shocked at some of the stuff that has gone on in the past, and admits, as a male engineer through the industry, he didn't see any of that, and it's been a real eye opener for him, and it's he's looking at people in his team and how he can also help them. So we've helped each other in that respect.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you've got parallel, related careers, and his perspective and your perspective completely different.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, really interesting. I've got 3 shaping moment questions for you.
Okay.
that are playing into my Places She Shapes at Abbey Road Studios title. The first one is, what's one tool, resource or item that you must have in your workspace that allows you to do your best work?
Oh gosh, I'm never without a pen and a bit of paper. And when I think of something, I just write it down. Even if it's, nothing related to what I have to be actually doing. And then I look back at it at the end of the day. And I've got all sorts of, I've even got bits in my handbag today, books that I keep with me, that I jot things down, or I want to go back and look at stuff. And that sounds really old school, because some people say, oh, it's my phone, or it's my Garmin. All of these things I love, but if I haven't got a pen and a piece of paper, I'll write napkins, I'll tear things off and write on them, because when I've written it down, I can visualise it and see it, and then it's embedded in me. So long live the pen and paper.
Looking back, is there a place, a room, a building or a city where you found your voice or realised your potential as a leader, even if you didn't recognise it at the time?
Probably London as a city. When I came to London, in some respects, it's so like Glasgow, but it's not. Where I come from, where I live in the East End of London, it's just so like Glasgow to me. Everybody knows everybody from the Gorbals somewhere, but London, I felt listened to me, and didn't have the bias and the closed mind attitude that I saw elsewhere, particularly in Scotland. I love Scotland, but they've got to kind of get out themselves sometimes. But coming to London, where I felt, if you've got the tenacity here, you can do this.
Has there been a building or a project that you've worked on that you think has changed the course of where your career has gone?
Maybe not changed the course of my career, but one building that really stands out to me was when I worked at Senate House for the University of London, which is a really iconic 1930s brutalist building. That has been actually in many movies. And to actually say to people, I did stuff in that building. And even when I walk around London and I'm saying to people, yeah, I worked on that job. Oh, yeah, I worked on that job. And you go, how? How did you do that? Little old you guys with a handful of guys? You were working on projects like this. But that building, Senate House, being so iconic, and say, oh yeah, we did a job in there, and a really good one. That felt is when it put us on the map.
I've got a 7-year-old at home who changes his career title of what he's going to be in the future very often. So I just wondered what your career title would have been, or your job title would have been when you were 7, and how is that? How does that connect to the woman?
Oh, I'd been a proper prima donna on the stage. Absolutely, yes. 7-year-old Marian was, such a ballet dancer, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to dance, and I wanted to be Dame Margot Fontaine, and all these fabulous people on stage, where people come and see you for what you've achieved and what you can do. So that was certainly what I would have been at 7.
And how do you think that connects to who you are today?
Definitely wanting to, make a difference and make a difference to people's lives. I remember going to see Dame Margot Fontaine in a ballet. It was a treat my mum saved up for when she was coming to Glasgow, and took me to, and just seeing, and what a difference that seeing someone of that calibre doing that, and what joy it brought me. And so perhaps that has carried through, is that in terms of, I want to make a difference to people. I want to have, have a positive difference to people. And that so people can go away and go, well, I'm glad I knew Marian.
Get so emotional about these things. It was great.
Yeah, no.
Marian, thank you so much for joining me. It's been brilliant. Really loved it.
Thank you for having me.
Sounding great, everyone.